Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We are dealing with the final phase of Klesha called Abhinivesha, and therein we saw that it is clinging to existence. The vasana, the tendency that I should not cease to exist. So that is clinging to life, clinging to existence, is what is said to be a kind of tendency in Abhinivesha. And therein we came to a question here that if this is there in everyone without exception, every life form, it is there without exception, be that a human being or subhuman or superhuman, this tendency doesn't leave. This klesha doesn't leave. So it's an unexceptional kind of vasana. But then we come across the fact that there are many people who commit suicide, who have intent to commit suicide, who commit suicide, who successfully commit suicide. So, how can this be reconciled with this klesha that has been spoken about, which is clinging to one's existence? And we see that this is at stake in case of attempt to suicide or in committing suicide, but that is very much rampant in human form of life, that we see that suicidal tendencies are there. So how is that there is this suicidal tendency? Does it mean that they do not have Abhinivesha klesha? But then it is said to be unexceptional klesha on one hand, and then are these exceptions to it? So this is a very interesting question that has come about, and we'll have to tackle that. So basically, Abhinivesha is there from akrumi, from tiniest of tiny life forms in the form of microscopic life forms to vidushi. Vidushi means purva aparanta jnana vijnata paranta, one who has knowledge of reality, philosophical knowledge of reality, one who knows that we are all mortals, and despite knowing that we are all mortals, it is said that he too has this klesha. We come across people who are spiritually realized, and they don't seem to have fear of death. But then this klesha is said to be there even in them, and this is quite express statement of Patanjali. So the point is that it is little confounding and difficult to reconcile with what we see as a reality and then what is postulated in the text of Patanjali. So we are going to counter this very interesting question, seems to be a very formidable question. And therefore, let us commence with what has been repeatedly said, that is about mathematics of klesha. So, Abhinivesha should be understood as Dvesa into Dvesa, or Raga raised to 4, Dvesa square or Raga raised to 4. Now this has been a postulation right from beginning of the topic of Kleshas. So it is expansion of Dvesa and much more expansion of Raga. So we should look at Abhinivesha in the sense that it is Raga escalation and Dvesa escalation. So this will slightly ease out our problem. One who commits suicide, or one who has intent to commit suicide, or one who commits suicide and successfully commits suicide, you will certainly see that there is no other reason to commit suicide or intent to commit suicide without raga and without dvesha. That's why this postulation of Kleshas, in the sense of it is avidya and avidya and avidya only, and it is escalation of avidya from avidya phase to Abhinivesha phase. This has been very important postulation. So point is that one who commits suicide or has intent to commit suicide, you can't say that there is the cause of committing suicide is absence of any attachment or absence of any aversion. And you will see that there is out of proportion magnification of attachment and aversion, whereby the suicide is caused. So it is inflation of raga and inflation of dvesha, and this is certain. If you try to psychoanalyze the mindset of a person who intends to commit suicide or who has committed suicide, you will see that it is because of raga atishayata, atishaya raga atishayata, or dvesha atishayata. Atishayata means exuberance. Without that, nobody would commit suicide. So this is certain. So why somebody commits suicide? There is attachment, enormous attachment to something, and then there is a kind of feeling that I won't be attaining that. What I've been having attachment for, it is certainly not my cup of tea and I will never receive it. So this is one of the reasons why somebody commits suicide. There is a ragati shayata. And that too, unwieldy kind of attachment. The growth of attachment is so much. And then it is deemed that one will not be able to attain it, and then therefore that one person is the one who commits suicide. Or on the other hand, it is dveshati shayata. There is aversion for something, and one cannot be separating from that aversive factor. It is sticking on to person and cannot be escaping the gravity of that aversive factor, aversive object, aversive condition. So when you feel that you cannot escape from the grips of aversion, that is another reason why somebody commits suicide. Otherwise, there is no way that somebody will commit suicide. So you will certainly find that there is ragati shayata into ragati shayata, that is double ragati shayata, or ragati shayata square condition, or dveshati shayata. So if you try to psychoanalyze why somebody has committed suicide, is that you will realize that there is unwieldy attachment. The person is not able to put up with that amount of attachment, and seeing that this attachment is not going to fructify. So this happens, suicides in love affairs. Now one knows that my love is not going to fructify, and it is certain that I will not be able to get what I am wanting, then there comes the reason for suicide. So we have to look at this suicide as ragati shayata. In case of matters such as attachment, somebody may be looking for wealth to become multi-billionaire. And that's obsession to become multi-billionaire. But seeing that there is no chance at all that uh, one can become multi-billionaire, that person commits a suicide because of the dream that the person having, that I should be a multi-billionaire, and seeing that there is absolutely not even an iota of chance, then suicide can take place. So the suicide is because of raga tishayata. On the other hand, the suicide may be because of aversion. Maybe somebody is suffering, enormously suffering, agony, torment, intimidations, tensions and worries and anxieties and sorrows. Now, these are all the things that one doesn't want. There is aversion for all this. Nobody invites worry, anxiety, intimidations. So there is something, there is aversion for such things. Or say a disease condition, the body having a disease, fatal disease. And then when one feels that there is no escape from this sufferance, for which there is tremendous the aversion, there is exuberance of aversion, and this is the exuberance of aversion is the cause of suicide. Otherwise, one won't commit suicide. There is no reason and no way that one commits suicide without inflated raga and inflated dvesa, inflated attachment and inflated aversion. So suicide doesn't happen without raga atishayata, without dvesha atishayata. This is quite logical, and this is how we can reconcile. So in Abhinivesha, you should not look at it as Abhinivesha in the form that it is expressed in definition, but the definition also implies that Abhinivesha is Dveshatishayata and Ragatishayata raised to square condition, square position. That is certainly there in suicide. And if we look at it as Ragatishayata and Dveshatishayata in Abhinivesha, then it is easily reconciled, naturally reconciled. So, as a matter of fact, it is exalted. It is again edema of Abhinivesha. It is excessive of Abhinivesha, in fact. It is because of more Abhinivesha that one takes recourse to suicide. Because the person wants to end that life in that condition. It is not that the person doesn't have springs to live, but he doesn't like to put up that condition, doesn't like to put up with the condition that attachment is so much and the thing is not going to materialize, as the attachment is dreaming for that, and our aversion is so much that you can't escape from that malady of which is the body and mind suffering, or body or mind suffering. So, as a matter of fact, in committing suicide, there is magnification of Abhinivesha. It is not that he doesn't have the tendency to clinch to existence. He doesn't want to clinch to that form of existence, that condition of existence. It is not that the person has no clinging to existence or is free from clinging to existence. So precisely, the person doesn't want to cling on to such kind of existence, not existence itself. It is such kind of existence which has come his way in his life or her life. And therefore, it is actually magnification of Abhinivesha, edema of Abhinivesha, growth of Abhinivesha when a person is committing suicide. So, we have to understand the difference between the tendency to clinch to existence and then the desire to give up a particular kind of existence. Desire to give up particular kind of existence. So it is different between tendency to exist and not to have a condition that I will never cease to exist. That vasana is there. But this is a desire. This is desire that I don't want to exist in such condition. So this should be understood. Then you will be able to reconcile with Abhinivesha. And as a matter of fact, these exceptional conditions to commit suicide is actually magnified Abhinivesha, the growth of Abhinivesha. So therefore there is no contradiction and there is no need to say that it is exception to Abhinivesha as Klesha. Secondly, we have to understand difference between Klesha and Vritti. The suicide takes place on account of Vritti, while this is a Klesha. This is a Vasana. Therefore, I have been repeatedly telling you to distinguish between Vasana and Vritti, particularly with reference to Raga and Dvesa. There was more emphasis on it to distinguish between Raga as Vritti, Dvesa as Vritti, and then on the other hand, Raga as Klesha and Vritti, Dvesa as Klesha. So, there is no need to posit or infer that those who commit suicide are free from Abhinivesha Vasana. Abhinivesha Vasana, or that the tendency of the nature of I should not cease to exist. That is very much there. So I don't want to cease from existence, but then I don't want a particular condition. I don't want to exist in particular condition. So their sorrow is sometimes so great that sometimes they enter the fire and burn their existence, which is, you can understand the agony of burn, or one in a burning condition, one is burning for fire, by fire. Now you can understand the agony of that. But this agony is not as much as the agony by not embracing the fire. So they embrace the fire, greater agony they embrace, because the agony of their life to exist that way, in that condition, unwieldy Raga and unwieldy Dvesa, that's not as much as entering the fire itself. But anyway, it is only a Vritti because of which suicides take place, and we are dealing with Vasana. So the Vasana is there for that very life. And this is the Vasana, the Vritti of embodiment, that I don't want to put up with my separation from my beloved, and I cannot be getting united with my beloved and therefore committing suicide, or I don't want the conjunction with the disease that I have, sorrow that I have, the pain that I have, the worry, anxiety that I have. I cannot face the disjunction with beloved and therefore committing suicide. So you have to psychoanalyze why the tendency to commit suicide is there, and you will see that there is nothing but raga tishayata, nothing but dvesha tishayata. Without raga dvesha unwieldy, there is no chance that one will commit suicide. Because it becomes unwieldy attachment, unwieldy aversion, unwieldy raga, unwieldy dvesha, then these things happen, and therefore the question which seemed to be formidable is not really formidable if you understand the tendency of Abhinivesha and the mental modification to commit suicide. So, with that, we are coming to the end of the topic of Klesha. And finally, let me tell you that these are Klesha vasanas, not to mistake between Klesha vritti, such as egotism or such as nescience, which is in mind. Somebody is ignorant, somebody has nescience in mind, someone has perversion in the mind. So, psychological perversion, there are some perverted people, they always look at the things in opposite way than it should be looked at and generality looks at. So that's called perversion. So perversion as a vritti, then egotism as vritti, attachment aversion as a vritti, and self-benediction as vritti, it is different. What is spoken of is klesha. And therefore, kleshas are there in all the manifestations which are in life form. So, life form and life principle are different things. Life principle is eternal, but life form is not eternal. And it is a life form which is because of klesha. The klesha is something which gives us embodiment, which gives us incarnation, which gives us manifestation. The klesha is material of our manifestation. So this basically has to be understood that this is klesha as vasana, which is not ruled out. So even the wise person may not be afraid of death as much as some of the mortals are afraid of death. So the fear of death will be more or less. Some people courageously face the death. Some people are timid to face the death. So that's a vritti. But what is spoken of is vasana. And this vasana, according to metapsychology, is said to be going away only in the case of dismantlement of chitta. The chitta should go away, then this Abhinivesha goes away. This is quite expressed in Patanjali's treatise. Chitta goes away when you don't have to take another incarnation. So that is called Charita Adhikara Chitta, Samapta Adhikara Chitta. And then that is Charamadehi. So that's the last embodiment, or what is also called as Jivana Mukta. We will be considering these concepts of Jivana Mukta, etc., Charamadehi, etc., when it appears in the topic. So it is, even then they have this Abhinivesha as a klesha. Only when in final dissolution for liberation and kaivalya, when the chitta is dismantled and it is no longer chitta, so therefore there will be no longer embodiment. So Abhinivesha is a subtle klesha, fag end of the klesha, and that only goes when the chitta, the locus of some vasana itself is gone. If there is no locus for vasana, then there won't be any vasana. So therefore, it is said that vidusho api tatha rudaha abhiniveshaha. So with that, we are ending the Abhinivesha klesha and Panchaparva klesha. So finally, let me tell you, although it literally means affliction, it should not be taken as affliction. So what is spoken of here is not afflictions. It is improper to render into English as afflictions, because these are not afflictions, need not be afflictions, may not be afflictions. More often they are not afflictions to mortal mind. Kleshas are kleshas. So why are they kleshas? Because they are reinforcing the bondage. They are reinforcing the condition for one to have incarnations after incarnations, and therefore that's the signature condition of bondage. What is bondage? That you are appearing life after life after life after life in some form or the other. So these are potentials for reincarnation. Therefore, potentials for bandha or actualized bandha. And what in spirituality one seeks at a particular stage is that doesn't want this life and death cycle, wants to be out of this life and death cycles. So the life and death cycle is given by klesha. And klesha vritti gives you kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsaryam, and therefore the whole dramatics of life. Because of kama, you will get even happiness. Sometimes krodha also gives you happiness. Many times you say, I am happy that I got angry with him, and the anger has proved to be fruitful. And you have your superiority because you are able to get angry on someone. So there are some people who become happy by having a qualification to be getting angry for someone, angry with someone. Well, that is their authority. And one is always happy with authority. So we were dealing with not afflictions. I finally repeat it, not afflictions, but kleshas. And many times we relish kleshas. Most of the time we relish kleshas. They are our party packs on which we make merry in life. We enjoy the life. If you are enjoying the life, it is because of kleshas. Now you can't say it's an afflictions. If you are enjoying a status, you can't say it is affliction, but it is a klesha. If you are enjoying sukha, it is not an affliction, but it is a klesha. If your I-ness is pampered, it is not an affliction, it's a gratification. So, there are gratifications by kleshas. If we are getting pain and pleasure, delight and sorrow, it is because of klesha. Nobody wants to do away with delights and pleasures. Nobody wants to do away with sukha. Everyone is looking for sukha, sukhanubhava, sukhavastu, sukha sadhana, sukhanubhava. Nobody wants to do away with it. How can you call it affliction? So, therefore, what is spoken of is kleshas must be ingrained, and then it should be seen that kleshas are going to give rise to karma ashaya, which is the topic to follow after the kleshas. Karma ashaya, karma bandha, life and death, then life conditions. So life conditions are both relishable and disgustable. You have relish for certain life conditions, you like certain life conditions, you don't like certain life conditions. So there are both that which you will like as well as dislike. You will love as well as you will loathe. That's the life condition. And therefore it cannot be considered as afflictions. And this is a major flaw which has come in translating the books on yoga and Patanjali's yoga, that these are referred to as afflictions. If they are afflictions, they are metapsychological afflictions. Psychologically, they can be party packs that you would like to relish them, enjoy them, get more and more of them. Anyway, so it's a metapsychological topic. So these are metapsychological afflictions, not just afflictions. And therefore, it is precise to call them Kleshas. So, with that, we are ending the topic of Klesha Parva. Now, what comes sequentially in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra is countering Kleshas. Because in path of spirituality, you have to counter Kleshas. You know that these are antagonizers. And you will have to put up with Kleshas. And therefore, since the Kleshas are to be attenuated in Kriya Yoga, that means they have to be encountered. We have to wage a battle on Kleshas, with Kleshas, and vanquish them. The Kleshas are something which should be conquered, vanquished, destroyed, neutralized. So, the next topic comes, for the sake of attenuation of Kleshas, is called encountering Kleshas. And Patanjali first mentions the subtle Kleshas, because a yogi who is going for Samadhi Bhavana, as we have seen, he is a Madhyamadhikari, he is a yogi. And therefore, he will not be bothered about the gross form of Kleshas. What he has to counter is Sukshma Kleshas. Whereas our condition is that we have to put up and fight with the gross form of Kleshas. Because we are not even Adhamadhikaris. If we practice yoga, we are not even Adhamadhikaris. We are Adhamadhamadhikaris. So Kleshas are our enemies, our foes. But however, with reference to Kriya Yogi, the major foe is Kleshas in subtle form, called Sukshma Klesha. Therefore, Patanjali begins to explain the neutralization of Sukshma Kleshas, particularly the Abhinivesha, Vijnata Purva Paranta Yogi, who knows from where have I come and where am I going. So one who has philosophy inculcated and imbibed and digested, he has to counter with subtle form of Kleshas, because now he wants to end the embodiment. He wants to end the Chitta. He wants the dissolution of Chitta, so that there is no more reappearance, reincarnation, birth, time and again, and then therefore the death that many times. So he is looking for moksha, nirvana, kaivalya. That means end of returning to mortality. And therefore his kleshas are subtle klesha in the form of Abhinivesha we saw. So next sutra comes on mentioning countering the subtle kleshas. So the sutra is Te pratiprasava heyaha sukshmaha. This is the sutra that follows this topic. And this is Sutra 2.10. So we have completed up to 2.9. Now we are proceeding to 2.10. That is Te pratiprasava heyaha sukshmaha. By pratiprasava they are countered, which are in subtle form. But we will consider that in our next session. Enough for the time being. Namaskar all of you.